I've always believed that marriage is like a well-designed system, reliable, predictable, built on solid foundations that can weather any storm. For 10 years, Natalie and I had operated like clockwork. Every morning, I'd wake at 6:30 to the sound of her humming in the kitchen, coffee already brewing, her dark hair catching the early light as she moved around our Portland suburban home with complete comfort. Our life together felt unshakable. I was 34, a senior systems analyst pulling in a comfortable six-figure salary. Natalie, at 35, had never needed to work, something she'd embraced wholeheartedly after we married, channeling her energy into our home and garden. This Saturday morning in March felt no different from hundreds before it. I found her in the garden, kneeling among rose bushes she'd cultivated for years, hands dirty with soil, pure contentment on her face. Natalie called out, holding up her phone. Even from 10 feet away, I could see bright colors of a concert poster. "Look at this. Ashes and Velvet just announced a Portland date. They're coming to the Moda Center next weekend." I recognized the band she'd been obsessed with since college. Her enthusiasm struck me as endearingly nostalgic, like holding on to a piece of her younger self that predated our marriage. "That's great, honey. You should definitely go," I replied. "Sophie already said she'd come with me. We can make a whole night of it. Dinner beforehand, maybe drinks after. It'll be like old times," she said excitedly. Sophie, her sister, was one of the few people I genuinely trusted with my wife. 2 years younger than Natalie, she'd always been more grounded, building a career in marketing while Natalie chose domestic comfort. "Sounds perfect. You deserve a fun night out," I told her. The words came easily because they were true. In 10 years of marriage, Natalie had never given me reason to worry. She wasn't the type to make reckless decisions. Our relationship was built on trust, communication, and mutual respect. Watching her scroll through concert information, I thought about our wedding day. How she'd laughed when my father's attorney insisted on the prenuptial agreement. She'd called it rich people paranoia, signing papers with carefree attitude of someone who couldn't imagine our marriage ending badly. The agreement was straightforward. In divorce, we'd each leave with what we'd brought in, plus equal split of shared assets, unless infidelity was involved. That clause specified proven adultery would result in the unfaithful party forfeiting claim to shared assets. Now, watching Natalie's excitement, that prenup felt like ancient history, irrelevant as insurance on disasters that would never happen. "When's the show?" I asked. "Next Saturday. Sophie's already looking at restaurants near the venue." "God, I haven't been this excited about anything in forever. Do you remember when we saw them in college? That was back when Zane Holloway was still doing acoustic sets before shows," she said, her voice full of nostalgia. I remembered. Early date, small venue, Natalie singing along to every song. That night, I'd known I was falling in love with her. Uninhibited joy. "I remember you knowing every single word," I said. "Still do. It's going to be incredible. Zane's voice has only gotten better with age," she replied. The way she said the lead singer's name, Zane, carried familiarity I'd noticed but never considered. Harmless celebrity admiration. The rest of the day unfolded with pleasant weekend predictability. We gardened together, ran errands, shared late lunch, discussing plans for the coming week. Natalie researched the concert, showing me photos from recent tours. The following Saturday morning, I watched Natalie prepare with calm confidence. She tried on 3 outfits, settling on jeans and vintage band t-shirt. "Sophie's picking me up at 6. We'll probably be home pretty late. You know how these things go," she said, while checking her appearance one last time. "No problem. Have fun and be safe," I replied. Those words would replay countless times over coming hours, taking on different meanings until they felt like the last innocent thing I'd ever said to my wife. As I watched her car disappear, I felt nothing but love and trust. I had no reason to suspect she was driving toward a decision that would destroy everything we'd built. Saturday evening found me in my home office, surrounded by comfortable chaos of a complex systems upgrade I'd been postponing for weeks. Lines of code scrolled across my monitor, the kind of intricate problem-solving that had always calmed my mind. The house felt peacefully quiet, Max, our golden retriever, sleeping at my feet. Distant traffic providing gentle backdrop to focused concentration. My phone rang at 9:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been tracking progress, noting timestamps as I'd completed each module. Natalie's contact photo filled the screen, a picture from our anniversary dinner last year, her smile radiant in restaurant's warm lighting. "Hey, beautiful, how's the concert?" I answered. "Liam, oh my God, you won't believe what just happened," she said breathlessly. Her voice was different, elevated, carrying energy I'd never heard before. Something manic about her excitement made me pause the code compiler and give full attention. "Who's going on? Is everything okay?" I asked. "More than okay. We got invited backstage," she said, words tumbling over each other like she couldn't get them out fast enough. "Sophie and I were at the bar during intermission, and this guy, he's part of the band's crew, recognized my vintage tour shirt from their 2018 show and started talking to us. One thing led to another, and now we're backstage with Ashes and Velvet." I felt small flutter of unease, though I couldn't pinpoint why. "That's incredible, honey. I know how much this means to you," I said. "Liam, I'm standing 10 feet away from Zane Holloway, like actually talking to him. He remembered the Portland show from 2018. Can you believe that? He said the crowd here was one of his favorites from that entire tour," she gushed. The way she said his name again, Zane, carried that same familiarity I'd noticed before, but now felt charged with something more immediate, more dangerous. Some instinct began sounding quiet alarms. "That's amazing, Nat. I'm so happy for you," I managed. "He's exactly like I always imagined he'd be, funny, smart, so down to earth. We've been talking about music, about Portland, about everything. He's nothing like you'd expect a rock star to be," she continued, something in her voice. Intimacy, connection, that seemed beyond casual celebrity conversation. I'd been married to this woman 10 years. I knew every note in her vocal range, every subtle shift in tone. What I was hearing was the sound of someone experiencing attraction. "Where's Sophie?" I asked. "She's around somewhere, talking to the drummer. Liam, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer," she said, her tone shifting to something more serious. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. In 10 years of marriage, she'd never prefaced a question that way. Whatever was coming next would change everything between us. "Okay," I said simply. "Do you remember that conversation we had a few years ago about hall passes, about how some couples have agreements about once-in-a-lifetime opportunities with celebrities?" she asked. I remembered. Hypothetical discussion sparked by some article. Late-night conversation between married couples, exploring boundaries that felt safely theoretical. We'd laughed, each naming our celebrity hall pass. Mine, Emma Stone. Hers, Zane Holloway. Harmless fantasy because it seemed impossible. "I remember," I said carefully. "Zane just asked if I wanted to go back to his hotel room," she said. The words hit like physical blows. My entire world tilted, everything I'd believed about my wife, my marriage, my life, reorganizing into completely different configuration. She wasn't sharing exciting celebrity encounter. She was asking permission to cheat. "Natalie, are you seriously asking me what I think you're asking me?" I said, my voice deadly calm. "It doesn't mean anything, Liam. It's Zane Holloway. This will never happen again. It's like winning the lottery. You don't get a second chance at something like this," she pleaded. Her justification revealed everything about how she was thinking, how she valued our marriage against this opportunity. She wasn't torn, wasn't conflicted. She'd already decided. This call was seeking retroactive permission. "You're asking me to give you permission to sleep with another man," I stated flatly. "I'm asking you to understand that this is bigger than just sex. This is about dreams, about possibilities I never thought I'd have. Please, Liam, please try to understand," she begged. Something cold and crystalline settled over me, like watching my emotions from great distance. The trusting husband who had answered this call was disappearing, replaced by someone who understood exactly what needed to happen next. "You have 3 hours," I said. "What?" she asked, confusion clear in her voice. "You have 3 hours to decide who you want to be, Natalie. If you go to that hotel room, if you sleep with him, then our marriage is over. When you walk back into our house, I'll either be married to the woman I trusted for 10 years, or I'll be dealing with a stranger who destroyed everything we built for a few hours with a celebrity, I explained with mechanical precision. Liam, you're being dramatic. It doesn't have to be, she started. 3 hours, starting now. Choose wisely, I interrupted. I hung up before she could respond, finger finding end call button with steady precision. The silence that followed felt massive, like moment after explosion when your ears are ringing and the world has been fundamentally altered. At 12:47 a.m., exactly 3 hours after our conversation, I received a 10-second video message from Sophie's phone. The video showed Natalie kissing Zane Holloway in what appeared to be hotel hallway, her hands tangled in his hair, body pressed against his with unmistakable intent. I forwarded the video to Maya Rothman with message, documentation obtained, proceed with divorce papers. The trusting husband who had answered her phone call was gone. The next 2 hours passed with methodical precision of a well-executed code deployment. I moved through my house like a systems analyst troubleshooting critical failure, each step logical, purposeful, designed to protect the integrity of what remained after the breach had been identified and contained. Maya had texted me a list of immediate action items, and I worked through them with the same focus I'd applied to any complex project. First, I needed to secure the physical environment. At 1:15 a.m., I drove to 24-hour Home Depot on Sandy Boulevard, where fluorescent lighting and empty aisles felt surreal given the magnitude of what I was preparing for. I bought new locks for our front and back doors, high-quality deadbolts that couldn't be defeated by spare keys Natalie carried. The elderly night clerk barely looked up as I paid cash, probably assuming I was dealing with security concern rather than systematic dismantling of a marriage. Back home, I installed new locks with steady hands of someone who had performed routine maintenance countless times. Each turn of the screwdriver felt like closing door on the life I'd known. But there was no emotion in the action, only satisfaction of tasks completed correctly. While I worked, I called Maya Rothman again. "The documentation is clear and unambiguous," she told me. "Your wife's behavior constitutes adultery under Oregon law, and your prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause is ironclad. She'll leave this marriage with exactly what she brought into it, which, according to your records, was approximately $12,000 in personal savings and a 2019 Honda Civic." The numbers were stark. In 10 years of marriage, Natalie had contributed nothing to our shared wealth. I'd paid mortgage, utilities, insurance, property taxes. Her contributions had been domestic, cooking, cleaning, decorating, gardening. Valuable in their way, but not financially quantifiable in the divorce she'd just made inevitable. "What about spousal support?" I asked. "Oregon allows for spousal support in long-term marriages, but adultery significantly impacts the court's decision. Combined with her voluntary unemployment and the prenup's language, she'll receive minimal support, if any," Maya explained. "And how quickly can we execute this?" I pressed. "I'll have Jordan Fisk, our process server, ready by 6 p.m. tomorrow. Based on your wife's patterns, what time does she typically return home on Sundays?" she asked. I thought about our routine, predictable rhythm of weekends. "She usually gets back from errands around 4 p.m., but given everything that's happened, I'm not sure her patterns will hold," I said. "We'll position Jordan at 4:30 p.m. If she's not home by then, he'll wait. The key is serving her before she has time to calm down, think strategically, or seek her own legal counsel," Maya replied. As Maya spoke, I found myself moving through our bedroom, beginning the process of packing Natalie's belongings. This wasn't emotional revenge, it was practical necessity. If our marriage was over, she couldn't remain in the home I'd bought and maintained. But more than that, I needed her to understand immediately that her choice had consequences. I worked systematically, filling garbage bags with her clothes, shoes, jewelry, personal items. Each bag represented a year of our marriage, a segment of the life we'd built together, now being dismantled, with the same care I'd applied to decommissioning failed server. Max followed me from room to room, sensing change in the house's energy. When I sat on edge of our bed, my bed now, with one of Natalie's sweaters in my hands, he placed his massive head on my knee and looked up at me with a kind of unconditional loyalty my wife had just proven she didn't possess. "It's gonna be okay, boy," I told him, scratching behind his ears. "It's just going to be different." The dog's presence was oddly comforting. Unlike my wife, Max's affection wasn't conditional, wasn't dependent on excitement or novelty or once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. He was a living reminder that loyalty was possible, that commitment could be genuine and lasting. By 3:30 a.m., I had packed 7 large garbage bags with Natalie's possessions. Everything that was clearly hers, everything that held her personal history but not our shared memories. I left our wedding photos, vacation pictures, gifts we'd given each other. Those items would be dealt with later, when legal proceedings were complete. After loading Natalie's belongings, I drove to 24-hour storage facility on outskirts of Portland, where I rented small unit and deposited the 7 bags. I paid for 3 months in advance, enough time for divorce to be finalized and for Natalie to figure out her new living situation. On the drive home, I called Sophie. Went to his hotel room. I tried to talk her out of it, I swear I did. I told her she was making the biggest mistake of her life, but she wouldn't listen. Sophie said when she answered, "Sophie, I need you to understand something. In about 14 hours, Natalie is going to be served with divorce papers. She's going to discover that her decision tonight has cost her everything," I said calmly. "You're not serious," Sophie gasped. "We had prenuptial agreement with infidelity clause. She signed away her rights to marital assets the moment she walked into that hotel room," I explained. After a long pause, Sophie said quietly, "Even if she's my sister, cheating is cheating." By 5 a.m., I was back home, sitting in my kitchen making final preparations. The house felt different already. Quieter, more spacious, like system running more efficiently after unnecessary programs had been terminated. At 4 p.m., I positioned myself where I could monitor security cameras. Jordan Fisk arrived at 4:25 p.m., carrying leather portfolio and calm demeanor of someone who delivered bad news countless times. At 4:47 p.m., Natalie's Honda Civic pulled into our driveway. Through my office window, I watched my wife of 10 years step out of her car with casual confidence of someone returning home from ordinary day. She moved with same easy grace I'd observed that morning in our garden, but everything about the context had changed so fundamentally that she might as well have been a stranger approaching someone else's house. She looked tired but not devastated, rumpled but not ashamed. Her hair was pulled back in messy ponytail, and she wore the same clothes from the night before, now wrinkled and carrying invisible weight of her betrayal. She checked her phone as she walked toward front door, probably expecting to find apologetic text messages from her husband. The sound of Natalie's key hitting new lock mechanism was audible even from my office. Sharp, metallic protest that would be her first indication that something had changed. She tried again, jiggling the key with frustrated determination of someone who believed the problem was mechanical rather than intentional. After third failed attempt, she rang the doorbell. Jordan opened the door with practiced calm. Through security camera, I could see Natalie's face cycle through confusion, concern, and beginning of genuine alarm as she processed presence of stranger in her home. "Mrs. Natalie Brennan?" Jordan asked professionally. "Yes, but who are you? Why are you in my house?" she demanded. "I'm Jordan Fisk, licensed process server for the state of Oregon. I'm here to serve you with legal documents on behalf of your husband, Liam Brennan," he explained. I watched her face transform as the words registered. Casual confidence evaporated, replaced by something closer to panic as she tried to process what was happening. "Legal documents? What are you talking about? Where is my husband?" she asked frantically. "Ma'am, I need you to accept service of these documents," Jordan said, extending manila envelope containing divorce papers, financial restraining orders, and formal notice that her adultery had voided her claim to marital assets. "I don't understand. This is some kind of mistake," she protested. "Ma'am, these documents detail the dissolution of your marriage and your legal obligations going forward," Jordan replied. The word dissolution seemed to hit her like physical blow. I watched her stumble backward, hand reaching for door frame to steady herself as reality began to penetrate her shock. "Dissolution? You mean divorce? But we just had a fight. This is crazy," she said desperately. "What?" She finally took envelope with trembling hands. "I need to talk to my husband. There's been some kind of misunderstanding," she pleaded. "Ma'am, I also need to inform you that effective immediately, You're restrained from accessing joint financial accounts and from entering this property without prior legal arrangement, Jordan continued. During this property? This is my house, she shouted. According to these documents, this property belongs solely to your husband. You have 30 days to arrange for removal of your personal belongings, which are currently in Storage Unit 247 at Secure Space on Powell Boulevard, Jordan explained. I watched Natalie's legs give out. She sat down hard on our front steps, manila envelope falling open in her lap, legal papers scattering like leaves. Her face had gone completely white. Jordan stepped back into house and closed door, leaving Natalie sitting on our front steps, surrounded by legal documents that had just destroyed her life. My phone rang. I let it ring through the voicemail twice before answering on the third call. Liam, what the hell is going on? There's a man in our house saying you're divorcing me, she said, her voice breaking. How was your night with Zane Holloway? I asked calmly. Silence stretched so long I wondered if call had dropped. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. How did you? She started. Sophie sent me a video. 10 seconds of you and him in hotel hallway, making your choice very clear, I said. It was one night. One stupid, meaningless night. How can you throw away 10 years over one mistake? She cried. You didn't make a mistake, Natalie. You made a choice. You chose Zane Holloway over our marriage, I replied coldly. Please, Liam, please don't do this. We can fix this, she begged. The woman I married wouldn't have needed to fix this because she never would have broken it in the first place, I said. I hung up before she could respond, then immediately blocked her number. Through security camera, I watched her gather scattered divorce papers and walk to her car, moving like someone in shock. As her Honda Civic disappeared down our street, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The hardest part was over. 6 months later, I stood in my garden on a crisp October morning, harvesting the last tomatoes from the vegetable plot that had replaced Natalie's rose beds. The transformation felt symbolic, beauty replaced by practicality, ornamental giving way to functional. My Saturday routine had evolved into something entirely my own. Coffee first, then garden work that grounded me after spending weeks immersed in systems and code. Max supervised from his spot under the maple tree, content to watch his human navigate this new version of their shared life. The house had been transformed as well. Natalie's decorative touches, throw pillows in colors I'd never understood, scented candles, artwork chosen for emotional impact, had been replaced by functional minimalism that reflected my actual preferences rather than marriage compromises. The doorbell rang at 10:15 a.m. Through the window, I saw Sophie holding 2 coffee cups and wearing the careful expression of someone bringing unwelcome news. Morning, Liam. I brought coffee from that place on Burnside you used to like, she said as I opened the door. She followed me to the back deck where I'd installed new teak furniture designed for comfort rather than appearance. How are you doing? She asked, studying my face for signs of hidden damage. I'm doing well. Better than well, actually. I'm doing exactly what I want without having to consider anyone else's needs, I replied honestly. That sounds lonely, she said. It sounds peaceful, I countered. Sophie gathered courage to say whatever she'd come to say. I wanted to update you on Natalie. I know you probably don't want to hear about her, but I thought you should know how things have turned out, she said carefully. I'm listening, I said. She's living with our parents again. Has been since about a month after the divorce was finalized. She tried to find her own place, but without work experience or credit, landlords wouldn't take her seriously. Sophie explained. The image of my 35-year-old ex-wife sleeping in her childhood bedroom struck me as both pathetic and appropriate. What about work? I asked. It's been challenging. 10 years out of the workforce is hard to explain to employers, especially when you chose not to work rather than being unable to find employment, Sophie said. Sophie's phrasing revealed the reality Natalie was discovering. Choosing financial dependence for a decade had consequences beyond relationship security. Eventually, she found part-time work at a dental office, filing, answering phones. $15 an hour, maybe 25 hours weekly, when they're busy, she continued. I did the mental math. Maybe $19,000 annually before taxes, less than she used to spend on clothes during our marriage. Our parents are helping with expenses. They're not happy about having a 35-year-old daughter move back home, but they won't let her be homeless, Sophie said. That's generous, I replied. They're frustrated. They ask constantly when she's going to take responsibility for the situation she created. They blame her for what happened, not you, she added. This carried more weight than expected. Learning that her parents held their daughter responsible felt like validation I hadn't realized I needed. What does she say? I asked. Sophie hesitated. She says it was a mistake that shouldn't have cost her entire life. She says you overreacted. The familiar refrain revealed that Natalie still hadn't accepted responsibility. 6 months later, she was still casting herself as victim rather than author of her consequences. She still doesn't understand what she did wrong, I observed. I don't think she does. She talks about it like a moment of weakness that should have been forgiven. Sophie agreed. And what do you tell her? I asked. I tell her that cheating is cheating. I tell her you had every right to protect yourself from someone who would betray you for a celebrity encounter, Sophie said firmly. Have you heard anything about Zane Holloway? I asked. Nothing. According to Natalie, she never heard from him again. He moved on to the next city, probably the next woman. I don't think he even remembers her name, Sophie said. The irony was perfect. Natalie had destroyed a 10-year marriage for an encounter with someone who'd forgotten her before his tour bus left Portland. Does she ever ask about me? I asked. She asks if you're dating anyone, if you seem happy, Sophie replied. And what do you tell her? I pressed. That you're building a good life for yourself, she said. Are you dating anyone? Sophie asked. I'm not closed off to the possibility, but I'm learning the difference between being lonely and being alone. When I do choose to share my life again, it'll be with someone who understands that commitment means something, I replied. Natalie sometimes talks about reconciliation, Sophie said carefully. The suggestion was fundamentally misguided. Sophie, the woman I married, would never have made that phone call. That woman doesn't exist anymore, I said. As Sophie prepared to leave, she paused. What should I tell her about this conversation? She asked. Tell her that I wish her no harm, but I feel no responsibility for the life she chose to create. Tell her that closure doesn't require forgiveness. Sometimes it simply requires protecting your own dignity, I said. That evening, I sat in my office reviewing an email from Maya Rothman suggesting I write about my experience. As Max settled at my feet, I opened a new document titled The 3-Hour Window. 6 months ago, I'd lost a marriage. What I'd actually lost was an illusion, and what I'd gained was more valuable, the knowledge that I would never again compromise my self-respect for someone else's comfort. Justice didn't always arrive with dramatic flair. Sometimes it was simply the natural result of choices playing out over time. Sometimes justice was just refusing to rescue someone from the life they'd chosen to create. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. The cursor blinked at me from line 847 of the authentication module, 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I was still hunting down a bug for a client deadline. The house was quiet, Emma finishing homework upstairs, Jake asleep after Little League practice, and Rebecca supposedly at a marketing dinner in Denver. I reached for my third cup of coffee, cold but still caffeinated. This was our rhythm. Rebecca traveling for work while I held down the fort, debugging code for clients who needed everything. Yesterday, 16 years of marriage had settled into shared calendars, quick kisses goodbye, and the subtle distance that had grown between us over recent months. Ping cloud storage sync complete. I frowned. I hadn't uploaded anything. Must be one of Rebecca's work presentations auto-syncing. She always forgot to turn off the automatic backup feature I'd set up years ago. I clicked the notification out of idle curiosity, expecting another PowerPoint about market strategies. Instead, my world imploded. The file was a video, 23 minutes and 17 seconds long. The thumbnail showed Rebecca's face, flushed and radiant in a way I hadn't seen in months. She was on a bed that wasn't ours, in a room I didn't recognize, with a man who definitely wasn't me. My finger hovered over the trackpad. Part of me wanted to close the laptop, pretend I'd never seen it. But the analytical part of my brain needed to understand what I was looking at. I clicked play. The first seconds were devastating. Rebecca straddling a dark-haired man, moving with enthusiasm she hadn't shown me in over a year. But the audio destroyed me. God, I've needed this, Rebecca panted breathlessly. David is so boring. Same routine every night. Dinner, TV, bed, no passion, no spontaneity. The man beneath her, older, expensive watch glinting, ran his hands down her back. What about financially? He asked with casual interest. You said, he's not exactly killing it. Rebecca laughed bitterly in response. Mediocre at best. We're comfortable, but that's it. I deserve better than settling for a middle management programmer who thinks Olive Garden is fine dining. My stomach lurched. This wasn't just infidelity. This was character assassination. My wife of 16 years was performing emotionally for another man's camera, because it was obviously being recorded intentionally. The angle was perfect, lighting good, Rebecca's performance deliberate. She kept glancing at the device, ensuring her words carried clearly. I skipped ahead. More passionate intimacy interspersed with casual cruelty. Rebecca complaining about our suburban house, mocking my weekend projects, describing our marriage as dead, while simultaneously planning our family vacation to Yellowstone. The worst part came near the end. The man asked about her kids. They're fine, Rebecca said dismissively, barely pausing her movements. Emma's busy with school, Jake's got sports, they barely notice when I'm gone. David handles all that domestic stuff. You don't feel guilty? The man pressed. Rebecca's laugh was sharp and cold. About what? Finally feeling alive again? Mark, I've been sleepwalking through my life for years. This, us, is the first real thing I've felt in forever. Mark. Now I had a name. I paused the video, staring at my wife's face, radiant with betrayal. The timestamp showed 3 hours ago. Rebecca had texted at 7:30 saying dinner was running. Long. At that moment, she'd been comparing me unfavorably to Mark while planning our vacation. My phone buzzed. Rebecca's photo filled the screen. Hey, honey, she said breathlessly when I answered. Sorry I'm calling so late. Dinner ran super long and Jennifer from corporate wanted to discuss Q3 projections. I stared at the paused video. Rebecca's face, flushed with satisfaction, hair tousled, eyes bright with joy, I couldn't remember seeing directed at me in months. How was the food? I managed to ask. Hotel restaurant stuff. Pretty boring, actually, my wife replied casually. Can't wait to get home to you and the kids. Boring. The same word she'd used to describe me minutes ago while writhing on top of Mark. Drive safe. I love you, I said automatically. Love you too, honey, Rebecca responded warmly. The call ended. I sat surrounded by family life, Emma's honor roll, certificate, Jake's baseball schedule, 16 years of shared memories. On my laptop screen, the frozen image of my wife glowing with betrayal. The cloud sync notification blinked. Rebecca's technological carelessness had just handed me the evidence that would change everything. She'd been careful to lie to me, but forgotten about the digital trail. I closed the laptop and listened to familiar sounds. The refrigerator humming, floorboards creaking, a car pulling into our driveway. Rebecca was home. I didn't sleep. Instead, I spent the night documenting everything. Screenshots of metadata, backup copies saved to secure locations. A timeline of Rebecca's recent work trips, cross-referenced with expense reports and credit card statements. By dawn, I had the foundation of a case. But first, I needed to understand exactly who I was married to. Rebecca came downstairs at 7:15, humming softly. She was glowing in a way that might have seemed refreshing if I didn't know its source. Her hair was perfectly styled, despite her supposedly late night, makeup flawless, step light, and confident. "Morning, honey," she said cheerfully, kissing my cheek with lips that had been on another man 12 hours earlier. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." "Work stuff," I replied, studying her face for any sign of guilt. I poured her coffee, watching for any sign of guilt. Nothing. If anything, she seemed more affectionate than usual. Emma stumbled downstairs in school clothes. At 15, she was developing my analytical mind, and I could see her studying her. Mother's unusually cheerful demeanor. "You seem happy this morning, Mom," Emma observed with teenage directness. "Just a good meeting yesterday," Rebecca answered smoothly, ruffling Emma's hair. "Sometimes work energizes me. How's the chemistry project?" "Fine," Emma replied, her tone suggesting she wasn't buying the explanation entirely. After the kids left, Rebecca lingered over coffee with unusual attention. "David, I've been thinking about us lately," she said with careful deliberation. My blood went cold. "What about us? We've been in such a routine. Don't you think we need to shake things up? Add some excitement?" she asked, eyes brightening with what I now recognized as calculated enthusiasm. The audacity was breathtaking. She was planning to justify her affair as marriage enhancement. "What kind of excitement?" I asked cautiously. Rebecca's eyes brightened further. "I was talking to colleagues about how mature couples handle exploring, keeping the spark alive after so many years." I set down my coffee carefully. "What exactly are you trying to tell me?" She took a deep breath, clearly rehearsed. "I think we should consider opening up our marriage. Just physically, nothing emotional. A way to rediscover ourselves before reconnecting as a couple." She was suggesting I agree to let her continue her relationship with Mark with my blessing. "You want a hall pass?" I said flatly. "That's crude," Rebecca corrected with a slight frown. "I'm talking about mature adult exploration within our committed relationship." I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward her. The video was loaded, paused at a frame showing her face clearly. "Is this what you mean by mature exploration?" Color drained from Rebecca's face, but only momentarily. Then her expression hardened into something I'd never seen, cold, calculating, unashamed. "You've been spying on me," she accused. "Your phone!" "Auto-synced to our cloud storage," I replied evenly. "You handed me the evidence yourself." She glanced at the screen, then back at me. No tears, no apologies. Just irritation at being caught. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Since last night." Rebecca nodded, processing tactical implications. "Okay. Now we can have an honest conversation about our marriage." "What marriage?" I asked incredulously. "You spent last night having intimacy with another man while telling him how boring and financially mediocre I am." "The marriage that's been dead for months, David," she replied, her voice taking on the persuasive tone she used with difficult clients. "Where we go through motions for the kids while slowly dying inside. I'm not ashamed of needing more than this suburban prison. Mark makes me feel alive in ways you haven't in years. Mark Lavalier, VP of Sales at your company. Married with 2 kids, I stated. She waved dismissively. "That's complicated. We both understand what this is. Physical release, emotional connection, but nothing that threatens our primary relationships. Except you spent 20 minutes trash-talking. Your primary relationship while you fucked him," I pointed out. "I was venting frustration," Rebecca said with practiced justification. "Don't you complain about me sometimes?" The false equivalency was staggering. "Not while having intimacy with other women." "This is exactly what I mean about you not understanding mature relationships," she continued with growing confidence. "Other couples navigate this all the time." "How long?" I demanded. "We've been seeing each other 4 months," she admitted. "But the emotional distance started way before that. We've been roommates for over a year." 4 months. Rebecca's increased travel, new workout routine, working late weekend conferences. Were there others? I asked. She hesitated just long enough to confirm my suspicions. A couple of brief connections at conferences, nothing serious. Jesus Christ, Rebecca. Don't be dramatic, she replied with irritating calm. I explored physical connections while maintaining our family structure. Our kids are happy, bills are paid, social life intact. What's the problem? I stared at this stranger wearing Rebecca's face. This wasn't someone who'd made a mistake. This was someone who'd methodically planned deception while building justifications. The problem is that you're a liar and cheat who's been living a double life while I've been home raising our children. Our children are fine, Rebecca countered defensively. And my career supports this family as much as yours. Your career, that includes fucking your boss. VP of sales isn't my boss. He's a peer, she corrected. She stood, smoothing her skirt with practiced composure. Look, I know this is shocking, but we can work through this if you're willing to be adult about it. Opening up actually strengthens primary bonds. By opening up, you mean I pretend I'm okay with you continuing to sleep with Mark, I summarized. Among other things, yes. She confirmed with breathtaking magnanimity. And you'd be free to explore, too. The magnanimity was breathtaking. I want you to move to the guest room while we figure this out, I said firmly. David, she began. No, I interrupted. You want to explore other relationships? Start by exploring what it's like not sleeping in my bed. Rebecca's mask slipped, showing genuine surprise that I wasn't accepting her terms. You're being unreasonable. I'm being an adult, I replied steadily, which apparently means something different to me. She gathered her purse with sharp, irritated movements. I'm going to work. When I get home, I hope you've thought about this rationally. Our marriage doesn't have to end, David, but it does have to evolve. After she left, I sat alone in our kitchen, surrounded by breakfast remnants. The house felt contaminated by knowledge of what she'd been doing while I debugged code and helped with homework. I opened my laptop and continued building my case. If Rebecca wanted evolution, I'd give it to her. Just not the kind she expected. 2 weeks of careful performance followed. I played the considering husband, meeting Rebecca's attempts at honest communication with measured responses suggesting I might accept her arrangement. She interpreted my lack of explosive anger as progress. Meanwhile, I was building a case that would withstand any divorce attorney in Illinois. Sandra came recommended by my brother Mike, former Chicago PD detective, 15 years in private investigation specializing in matrimonial cases. Professional, discreet, expensive enough to ensure quality. Your wife's not very good at this, Sandra said during our third meeting, sliding a folder across the Starbucks table. Either incredibly arrogant or genuinely doesn't understand how easy she is to track. The folder contained a timeline that turned my stomach. Rebecca hadn't just been seeing Mark. She'd systematically worked through her company's executive ranks for over a year. Hotel receipts that didn't match claimed accommodations, expense reports for dinners with non-existent clients, conference registrations for events she'd never attended. Mark Lavalier is actually the third concurrent relationship, Sandra continued, matter-of-factly. There's James Morrison from Portland. She sees him during West Coast trips. And David Reese from European Division met during that London conference in February. I remembered London. Rebecca had been gone 6 days, supposedly meeting international clients. She'd returned energized and affectionate, bringing gifts and talking enthusiastically about expanding her professional network. She has a type, Sandra observed clinically. Married executives with strong financial profiles. Very strategic target selection. The evidence was overwhelming. Screenshots from Rebecca's company phone retrieved through Sandra's IT contact. Photos of Rebecca entering hotels with various men during claimed business trips. Financial records, showing personal expenses charged to company cards and reimbursed through fabricated client entertainment. But the most damaging evidence came from Rebecca herself. She'd gotten comfortable, and comfortable people make mistakes. Like the voice recording Sandra captured of Rebecca discussing me with Mark. David's basically a live-in babysitter at this point. Rebecca's voice was crystal clear through Sandra's recording equipment. He's got this whole domestic routine, so I don't deal with day-to-day kid stuff. Actually, pretty convenient. What about divorce? Mark's voice asked with casual interest. What about it? Rebecca responded with confident dismissal. He's conflict-averse and financially dependent on my income for the lifestyle he wants. He'll take whatever deal keeps him comfortable and avoids drama. I know exactly how to handle David. Sandra had dozens of similar recordings. Rebecca discussing her exit strategy, plans to eventually move in with whichever executive proved most advantageous, dismissive analysis of my character and earning potential. She's not wrong about being the higher earner, I admitted reluctantly. Her salary and bonuses are 30% higher. Doesn't matter, Sandra replied with professional certainty. Illinois is no fault, but adultery impacts property division and custody. Plus, she's been using marital assets to fund affairs, grounds for reimbursement claims. More importantly, Sandra documented Rebecca's increasing disengagement from family, missed parent-teacher conferences for fake client meetings, Jake's championship game skipped for a Portland weekend with James Morrison, Emma's Honor Society, induction cut short because Mark planned a surprise Chicago evening. Custody angle is your strongest play, Sandra advised. She systematically prioritized affairs over children's significant events. Any judge will notice that pattern. I studied photographs. Rebecca and Mark entering the Palmer house. Rebecca and James at a Portland restaurant that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. Rebecca alone at O'Hare with vacation luggage. Disguised as business travel. How did she think she'd never get caught? I asked, genuinely puzzled. Sandra shrugged with practiced cynicism. Compartmentalization. She's convinced her professional persona is separate from family life, and she's smart enough to manage both. Classic narcissistic thinking. The hardest part was watching Emma and Jake navigate their mother's increasing absence. Emma had started asking pointed questions about Rebecca's travel schedule, distracted behavior during dinners, inability to attend school events that had been calendared. For months, Mom seems different lately, Emma said while I helped with calculus, her voice carrying teenage perceptiveness. More selfish, I guess? She used to ask about friends and classes. Now she just nods and scrolls through her phone. Jake was more direct in his 15-year-old honesty. Why doesn't Mom want to hang out with us anymore? These conversations broke my heart, but strengthened my resolve. Rebecca wasn't just betraying me. She was abandoning her children for executive love affairs. Mike reviewed Sandra's evidence package with the cold eye of a family attorney. This is nuclear-grade material, David, he said with professional appreciation. Everything you need for primary custody, significant property advantages, and potential criminal charges for company credit card fraud. Criminal charges? I asked. Surprised. Using corporate funds for personal affairs, then filing false expense reports? Mike explained matter-of-factly. Textbook embezzlement. Her general counsel will recommend termination and prosecution to avoid liability. I thought about Rebecca's confidence in handling me, her assumption I was too passive to fight back. I want to give her one more week, I decided. Let her get comfortable enough to make one final mistake. You sure? Mike asked with lawyerly caution. Every day risks her getting suspicious. She won't, I replied with certainty. She's convinced she's outsmarted me. Rebecca's going to Chicago this weekend for what she claims is client presentation. Actually, it's a romantic getaway with Mark at the Peninsula. I've seen reservations. Mike leaned back with understanding appreciation. You want to catch her in the biggest lie yet. Then end this marriage in a way that protects my kids and ensures she faces consequences for every choice, I confirmed. Sandra smiled grimly with professional satisfaction. Scorched earth. I can work with that. 3 simultaneous strikes. Perfectly. Time to maximize impact and minimize Rebecca's damage control. She'd spent months maneuvering for advantage in a war she didn't know she was fighting. Time to show her what actual strategy looked like. Friday afternoon, Rebecca kissed me goodbye with lips that would be on another man within hours. She'd packed her small-wheeled suitcase, the one for romantic getaways, not the larger bag for actual business conferences, and was practically glowing with anticipation. Client presentation should go well, she said with practiced ease, checking her phone for the 10th time in 5 minutes. Might run late Sunday depending on follow-up meetings. Drive safely, I replied evenly. Tell the Hartwell Group I said hello. The Hartwell Group was fictional. Rebecca had created elaborate cover stories about courting major new clients, complete with fake presentation materials left strategically visible. She had no idea I'd verified no such company existed. After her car pulled away, I began executing the most precisely timed operation of my life. Phase 1 started at 4:47 p.m. with Mike's downtown law office. The divorce petition was comprehensive. 43 pages of evidence, financial analysis, and custody arguments Sandra and Mike had crafted into an unassailable legal weapon. Filing Friday afternoon means she won't be served until Monday, Mike explained. Gives you the weekend to execute other phases without her knowing what's coming. Perfect, I confirmed. Phase 2 required delicate timing. I'd spent 2 weeks crafting the perfect LinkedIn message to Jennifer Lavalier, professional, concerned, just specific enough to confirm suspicions she clearly already had. Her response came within an hour. David, thank you for reaching out. I've suspected something for months. Mark's been working late constantly, taking weekend business trips that don't show up on his company calendar, becoming increasingly distant and secretive. If you have evidence confirming what I think is happening, I need to see it. My children deserve better than this. I sent her a curated package, enough proof to confirm her marriage was over, but not so much she'd think I was vindictive. Jennifer Lavalier was about to have the worst weekend of her life, but she'd have evidence to protect her children and financial interests. Phase 3 was most satisfying. Rebecca's company had strict policies against personal relationships between employees, especially involving expense account fraud and travel privilege abuse. HR Director Margaret Torres was no nonsense, experienced with similar situations. Mr. Warner, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, she said during our Friday evening call with professional gravity. We'll need full investigation, but if these allegations prove accurate, Ms. Warner will face immediate disciplinary action. I understand, I replied respectfully. I thought the company should know before this becomes legal. It's going to become legal regardless, Margaret stated with corporate certainty. Using corporate funds for personal affairs and filing fraudulent expense reports? Textbook embezzlement. We'll have no choice but recommend prosecution. By Sunday evening, all pieces were positioned. Rebecca would return from her romantic weekend to find her professional life imploding, her lover's marriage destroyed, and divorce papers waiting. But first, I had one final performance. I'd invited both sets of parents for dinner under the pretense of working on our marriage issues. Rebecca's parents had never particularly liked me. I wasn't ambitious enough for their daughter. My parents had grown uncomfortable with Rebecca's behavior, but been too polite to comment. Emma and Jake were present when Rebecca walked in at 6:30, still glowing from her weekend with Mark. She was surprised to see everyone gathered but recovered quickly. "What's all this?" she asked with curious confusion, setting down her suitcase. "Family meeting," I announced calmly. "We need to discuss some things." Rebecca's parents looked confused but pleased. They'd been pushing marriage counseling. My parents looked concerned but supportive. Emma watched with sharp teenage attention, sensing drama. Jake was just happy everyone was together. "Before we start," I said with deliberate formality, opening my laptop, "I want everyone to understand exactly what we're dealing with." I'd prepared a presentation Rebecca would have admired. Clean graphics, bullet points, supporting documentation. Logical, evidence-based argument appealing to analytical minds. "Rebecca, 3 weeks ago you told me our marriage was dead and you'd been exploring relationships with other men to feel alive again, I began. You suggested we open our marriage to accommodate your affairs. Rebecca's face went white. This wasn't how she'd planned to control the narrative. David, what are you? She began desperately. Let me finish. I interrupted firmly. I clicked to the next slide, showing Rebecca's travel timeline cross-referenced with hotel receipts and expense reports. This records Rebecca's travel over the past year. Red indicates actual business trips. Blue indicates trips meeting married men for romantic weekends. Dead silence. Emma stared at her mother with dawning comprehension and disgust. Jake looked confused but sensed tension. Both sets of parents were processing implications. Rebecca has been conducting simultaneous affairs with at least 3 married executives from her company, I continued with methodical devastation, using our joint credit cards and her corporate expense account to fund these relationships while lying about client meetings and business conferences. I clicked through slides showing Sandra's photos, message screenshots, and audio transcripts of Rebecca discussing our family in degrading terms while planning her exit strategy. Rebecca tried, interrupting with desperate explanations, but evidence was overwhelming. Her explanations, photos taken out of context, messages misunderstood, crumbled against documentation weight. The breaking point came when I played audio of Rebecca describing our children as minor inconveniences and me as a live-in babysitter. She could manipulate. Emma stood abruptly, chair scraping hardwood. Mom, how could you say that about us? About Dad? She demanded with teenage fury. Emma, honey, you don't understand the context, Rebecca pleaded desperately. I understand you've been lying for months while Dad was home helping with homework. And driving us to games and conferences you were too busy cheating to attend, Emma shot back with devastating accuracy. Jake was crying, not understanding adult complexities, but recognizing family disintegration. My mother comforted him while shooting Rebecca pure disappointment. Rebecca's father cleared his throat with patriarchal authority. Rebecca Ann, is this true? Dad, it's complicated, Rebecca responded with weakening justification. Adult relationships aren't black and white? Did you or did you not have affairs with married men while lying to your husband and children? He demanded with simple moral clarity. Simple, direct question hung in air. Rebecca's sophisticated justifications about mature relationships suddenly seemed pathetic against her father's moral clarity. Yes, she admitted with crumbling defiance. But David is making it sound worse. How could it be worse? My father asked quietly with profound disappointment. You betrayed your family and abandoned your children for men who were also betraying their families. Rebecca's mother cried silently, dreams of her daughter's perfect marriage crumbling. My parents just looked sad. They'd suspected something but hadn't imagined deception scope. Emma delivered the killing blow with teenage directness. Mom, I can't believe you threw away our family for random guys who were probably lying to you as much as you lied to us. They weren't random, Rebecca protested weakly. Yes, they were, Emma interrupted with brutal honesty. You think Mark or James actually cared? They were using you for intimacy while staying married to their real families? And you were stupid enough to think that made you special. Rebecca exploded with maternal authority. Don't talk to me like that. I'm your mother. Then act like it, Emma shouted back with accumulated fury. A mother doesn't abandon kids for affairs. A mother doesn't miss her son's championship for her boss. A mother doesn't call her husband a boring babysitter while he's raising her children. Profanity from my normally well-behaved 15-year-old shocked everyone into silence. Emma was crying now, years of anger pouring out. Emma's right, Jake said quietly, voice thick with tears and simple childhood honesty. You don't want to be with us anymore. You're always somewhere else. Rebecca looked around at 6 faces reflecting disappointment, disgust, and pity. Her parents were ashamed. My parents were supportive but sad. Her children were angry and hurt, and I was calm, methodical, finished with her forever. "This is ridiculous," she said finally with desperate denial. "David's turned you all against me with his presentation. You don't understand the full situation." "Then, explain it," I said with deadly calm. "Explain how lying to your family, abandoning your children, and conducting multiple affairs while stealing from your employer represents the situation we're failing to understand." She couldn't. For all her sophistication, Rebecca had no defense against simple moral truth. She'd betrayed everyone who loved her for temporary excitement with men who were also betrayers. Rebecca grabbed her purse and keys with sharp, defensive movements. "I don't have to listen to this." "No, you don't," I agreed with cold finality. "But you'll listen to your attorney Monday when divorce papers are served. And you'll listen to HR about the investigation into your expense fraud. And you'll listen to Jennifer Lavalier's lawyer when she subpoenas you for her divorce proceedings." Rebecca stopped in the doorway with sudden alarm. "What? Did you think I'd discovered your affairs and done nothing?" I asked with quiet devastation. "I've spent 3 weeks building a comprehensive case with investigators and attorneys. Your professional life, relationships, and marriage are ending simultaneously, tomorrow morning." For the first time, Rebecca looked genuinely frightened. Her confidence in controlling the situation, managing reactions, emerging with minimal consequences, all crumbled as she realized she'd been outmaneuvered by the boring, passive husband she'd thoroughly underestimated. "David, we can work this out," she pleaded with growing desperation. "We don't have to destroy everything." "You already destroyed everything," I replied with finality. "I'm just cleaning up the mess." She left without another word, driving into darkness that had become her final judgment. Through the window, I watched her car disappear, taking 16 years of marriage and any illusions about the woman I'd loved. Emma hugged me fiercely. "Dad, I'm sorry she did this to you, to all of us," she said with fierce protectiveness. "I'm sorry too, sweetheart," I replied, holding her tight. "But we're going to be okay." Jake joined the hug. For a moment we stood there, father and children, damaged but not broken, ready to face whatever came next together. Rebecca's phone started buzzing before she'd made it home. Mark's wife had found the evidence. The reckoning had begun. The collapse came faster than I'd anticipated. Rebecca's double life imploded with controlled demolition efficiency, each failure triggering the next in a cascade she couldn't control. Monday brought divorce papers, served at Rebecca's office by a process server who found her in emergency HR meetings. Margaret Torres later told me Rebecca tried maintaining professional composure while being handed documents detailing her affairs and financial misconduct in clinical legal language. Tuesday, Mark Lavalier cleaned out his office. Jennifer's attorney had moved quickly, filing for emergency custody and asset protection based on my evidence. Mark's company, facing potential liability for executive misconduct, terminated him immediately to distance themselves from scandal. Rebecca's demotion came Thursday. Her new title, Junior Marketing Associate, carried 40% pay cuts and eliminated travel privileges. The company needed her gone but wanted to avoid wrongful termination lawsuits, so they'd created a position forcing resignation or professional purgatory. "She's basically answering phones and updating spreadsheets," Sandra told me during our final meeting with professional satisfaction. 20 years of advancement wiped out in a week. The custody hearing 6 weeks later was everything, Mike predicted. Rebecca's attorney, a tired public defender she'd been forced to hire after salary cuts made private counsel unaffordable, tried painting me as vindictive and controlling. But evidence spoke for itself. Judge Patricia Morrison reviewed Sandra's documentation with methodical attention of someone who'd seen too many families destroyed by adultery. "Ms. Warner, you missed your son's championship game for what you described as a much-needed weekend away from suburban tedium," she stated. "Is that accurate?" Rebecca shifted uncomfortably in the witness chair. "Your Honor, I was going through a difficult marriage period. That wasn't my question, Judge Morrison interrupted with judicial authority. Did you prioritize a romantic weekend with a married man over your 12-year-old's most important game? Yes. But, Rebecca admitted with crumbling defiance. And you missed your daughter's Honor Society induction for what your texts describe as an amazing night with James that was way better than watching Emma get another certificate. The judge continued relentlessly. Also accurate? The courtroom was silent, except for Rebecca's attorney scribbling unusable notes. Rebecca's pattern of choosing affairs over family responsibilities was documented too thoroughly for denial. Emma had asked to speak directly to the judge. At 15, her preferences carried serious weight. Your Honor, I love my mother, but I don't trust her anymore, Emma testified with remarkable composure. She's been lying to us for over a year while my dad held our family together. I want to live with him full-time and see Mom weekends if she even wants to. Jake's victim impact statement, written with my help but in his own words, was devastating. My mom used to come to games and help with homework. Now she's always somewhere else with people more important than us. Dad never misses anything. I want to stay with Dad. The judge awarded me primary custody with Rebecca receiving supervised weekend visitation. The supervision requirement stung, a clear message questioning her judgment and priorities. Financial settlement was equally brutal. Illinois' consideration of adultery and property division, combined with Rebecca's documented misuse of marital assets, left her with barely 30% of joint holdings. House, retirement accounts, and college funds remained primarily under my control. Mark's divorce proceeded even more catastrophically. Jennifer's attorney, armed with my evidence package, documented every hotel room, romantic dinner, and lie about working late. His settlement included primary custody of twin daughters, 70% of assets, and alimony until his youngest graduated college. Mark broke all contact with Rebecca the day his wife filed, Sandra informed me with investigative thoroughness. His love wasn't strong enough to survive actual consequences. James Morrison and David Reese suffered similar fates as their wives. Discovered evidence I'd shared through anonymous packages. Rebecca's exciting network of powerful lovers evaporated overnight, leaving her professionally diminished, financially strapped, and romantically alone. 4 months after my initial discovery, Rebecca was forced to sell her house stake to pay legal fees and moving expenses. She'd found a studio apartment across town, cramped, expensive, and daily reminder of the life she'd traded for temporary excitement. I attended the closing, watching Rebecca sign papers transferring her stake in 16 years of shared memories, for a check barely covering first year's rent. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by consequence weight she'd never anticipated. David, she said afterward in the parking lot with genuine vulnerability, I know you don't want to hear this, but I am sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. I studied her face, looking for the woman I'd married. She was still there, buried beneath poor choices and delusional justifications, but she was a stranger now. You're right. I don't want to hear it, I replied with measured finality. Not because I'm angry, but because it doesn't matter. You made choices, Rebecca. Every single day for over a year, you chose excitement over family, lies over truth, temporary pleasure over permanent relationships. I'm just ensuring you live with consequences. The kids barely talk to me anymore, she said with growing despair. That's not my fault, that's yours, I stated with unwavering clarity. You taught them mothers abandon children for affairs. You taught them wives lie while mocking husbands to lovers. If you want relationships with Emma and Jake, rebuild their trust one honest conversation at a time. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, first genuine emotion I'd seen since this began. I messed up everything good in my life for men who didn't even care about me, she admitted with devastating self-awareness. Yes, you did, I confirmed, without softening the blow. She nodded slowly, finally understanding her sophisticated justifications about mature relationships had been self-serving delusions. She'd destroyed her marriage, abandoned her children, and ruined her career for men who'd discarded her when loving her became inconvenient. "I hope someday you can forgive me," she said with quiet pleading. "I already have, Rebecca," I replied with surprising gentleness. "Not for your sake, but for mine and the kids. Holding anger would just give you power over our future. And you've had enough power over our lives." I drove home to the house that was now truly mine, where Emma was helping Jake with algebra at the kitchen table where Rebecca had once tried justifying affairs as marriage enhancement. The domestic routine Rebecca had mocked as boring had become our foundation for rebuilding. 6 months after the discovery that changed everything, I sat in the same office where my marriage imploded, watching Emma work on college application essays. She was writing about overcoming adversity, her words carrying wisdom of someone who'd learned early that character matters more than excitement. "I learned that integrity isn't about being perfect," she typed with thoughtful concentration. "It's about being honest, especially when honesty is difficult. My father showed me that real strength isn't about winning. It's about protecting people you love and holding accountable people who hurt them." Jake had thrived in our new stability. His grades improved dramatically once underlying tension disappeared, and his confidence grew knowing his father would always be present for important things. He still saw Rebecca every other weekend, but their relationship remained strained. She'd moved to a larger apartment and was making efforts to rebuild connections, but trust, once broken so completely, was slow to heal. My own life had found unexpected rhythm. Work was going well. The promotion Rebecca had mocked as middle management had led to senior architect position with substantial salary increases. I'd been on a few dates, but wasn't rushing into anything serious. Experience with Rebecca taught me the crucial importance of truly knowing someone's character before major commitments. That evening, I opened my laptop to delete the cloud storage folder containing all evidence from Rebecca's affairs. The video that started everything, Sandra's photographs, deception timeline, audio recordings, all could finally be permanently erased. Some things, I thought, hovering over delete, are better left buried once justice is served. The irony wasn't lost, that the same technology revealing Rebecca's betrayal now allowed me to let it go completely. Her careless digital security had been her downfall, but my methodical documentation had been our salvation. I clicked delete and watched 3 months of evidence vanish forever. Rebecca's betrayal would always be part of our family history, but no longer needed to be part of our future. My phone buzzed with Emma's text. "Thanks for always being the parent who stayed." I smiled and returned to evening cleanup that Rebecca had once mocked as suburban tedium. Dishes needed washing, tomorrow's coffee needed setting up, Jake's uniform needed checking for grass stains. Boring, domestic, predictable tasks that meant my children could count on me to be present, honest, and reliable. Rebecca had taught them, through negative example, that excitement without character is worthless, that promises matter more than passion, and that the parent who shows up consistently is worth more than the parent who shows up spectacularly but sporadically. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I've always been a creature of habit. My overnight shift at Patterson Logistics starts at 10 p.m. sharp, and by 2 a.m. I'm deep into the rhythm that sustained me for 3 years. The warehouse hums with quiet efficiency, automated systems, distant truckers grabbing coffee. It's honest work that keeps America's supply chain moving while most people sleep. Vanessa used to joke that I was part vampire, thriving in those dark hours. She'd call me her night owl when I'd slip into bed at 7 a.m. as she got ready for work. We'd worked out our rhythms over 2 years of marriage, and they felt solid, predictable, safe. That's why the 2 a.m. call felt natural at first. We'd developed this routine, a quick check-in during my break. Usually, she'd be drowsy but warm, telling me about her day or sharing some silly thought. I settled into the break room with my coffee and dialed her number. "Hey, beautiful. How's my favorite insomniac?" Her voice came through breathless, startled. "Adam? Oh, hi. I was in the bathroom." Something in her tone made me pause. In 2 years of 2 a.m. calls, Vanessa had never sounded winded from a bathroom trip. There was panic there, a flutter that didn't match the sleepy woman I knew. "Everything okay? You sound out of breath," I asked. "Yeah, no, I'm fine. Just couldn't sleep, so I was doing some stretches. Yoga stuff." She laughed, but it came out forced. "How's work? Busy night?" I found myself studying the empty break room, my mind automatically cataloging the strangeness. Vanessa hated yoga. She'd tried classes when we first married, complained endlessly, never mentioned it again. Why would she suddenly be doing stretches at 2 a.m.? "Standard Thursday night. Johnson's on vacation, so I'm pulling double duty." I kept my voice casual, but something was shifting inside me. "You sure you're feeling all right?" "I'm perfect, honey, really. Just tired." Another laugh, more controlled. "You should focus on work. I'll try to get some sleep." "Okay. Love you." "Love you too," she replied. The line went dead and I stared at my phone. 24 months of marriage and I'd never heard Vanessa sound like that. Breathless, yes, but not from yoga. There was something else. Guilt, like someone caught doing something they shouldn't. I tried to shake it off, returning to my rounds through the warehouse. But the feeling followed me between towering shelves, a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. I'd learned to read patterns in this business. Which suppliers shipped late, which invoices didn't match manifests. Details mattered. Small inconsistencies usually pointed to bigger problems. By 4 a.m., I was replaying the conversation and other details surfaced. Over the past month, Vanessa had been different. More attentive in some ways, asking detailed questions about my schedule, when I'd be home, whether I might pick up extra shifts. She'd started taking longer showers, spending more time on her appearance. And our physical intimacy had shifted. Less spontaneous, more scheduled, like checking a box rather than connecting. 3 weeks ago, she'd mentioned redecorating the living room, last week the bedroom. New curtains, maybe furniture. When I'd asked about expense, she'd waved it off, saying she'd been saving from her paycheck. But I managed our finances. I knew exactly how much discretionary income we had. The sun was rising as I finished my shift. My phone showed 3 missed texts from Vanessa, all sent around 3 a.m. "Sorry if I seemed weird on the call. Just feeling restless tonight. Can't wait to see you." I'd been married long enough to recognize overcommunication as guilt. When she'd dented my truck, she'd sent a dozen explanatory texts before I'd seen the damage. When she'd forgotten the electric bill, she'd prepared a full presentation. Vanessa's natural response to feeling bad was flooding me with words. Sitting in the parking lot, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Accusations without proof would just give her time to craft better lies. Instead, I was going to verify what I hoped wasn't true. The house looked peaceful in morning light, our small yard perfectly maintained. Blue shutters Vanessa had insisted on painting still bright and welcoming. This was supposed to be our starter home, where we'd begin our family. We'd been trying to get pregnant for 6 months, timing everything carefully, talking about converting the spare bedroom. Now I wondered if she'd been pretending about that too. The research phase consumed my off hours for the next week. While Vanessa slept, I sat in the spare bedroom with my laptop, diving deep into surveillance technology. Amazon became my teacher, customer reviews my textbook. I learned about wireless cameras, cloud storage, motion detection, live streaming capabilities. Every product description felt like acquiring surgical tools I hoped I'd never need. The psychology was the hardest part. I was preparing to document my own life's destruction, to become director of a movie I desperately didn't want to see. but methodical research gave me something to focus on besides the growing certainty that my marriage was already over. I settled on 4 wireless cameras, small enough to hide but powerful enough to capture clear video in low light. Living room behind a picture frame with clear view of the couch and front door. Bedroom tucked inside the alarm clock on my nightstand. Vanessa never touched that side. Hallway connecting bedroom to the rest of the house. Kitchen hidden among decorative bottles above the refrigerator, viewing the back door. The cameras would upload automatically to cloud storage, and I could watch live feeds from my phone. If nothing happened, I'd remove them and try rebuilding trust. If something did happen, I'd have undeniable evidence. The installation took place during Vanessa's work hours while I was supposed to be sleeping. Each camera placement required imagining scenarios I didn't want to face. My wife bringing another man into our home, our bedroom, the life we'd built together. The bedroom camera was hardest to position. I had to consider angles, lighting, what exactly I might need to document. Technical aspects helped me stay detached, treating it like a complex work problem rather than my marriage's potential end. Meanwhile, Vanessa's behavior continued shifting in ways my new paranoia amplified. She'd started asking about my work schedule. Not just what time I'd be home, but whether I might stay late, whether Patterson had weekend shifts, whether I'd gotten to know coworkers better. Her interest felt calculated, rather than caring. She'd also developed sudden friendship with our neighbor Marcus. Marcus lived 3 houses down, a divorced contractor in his late 30s who'd moved to the neighborhood about a year ago. I'd helped him move furniture when he arrived. Seemed decent, kept his yard neat, nodded politely when we passed. But over the past month, his presence had become prominent in Vanessa's conversations. She'd mentioned casually, Marcus offered to look at that loose railing on the back deck. Simple fix, might save us from calling a handyman. Then it was, Marcus thinks we should trim those overgrown bushes. He has all the right tools. And Marcus mentioned his contractor discount could help with that bathroom renovation. Marcus. Always offered as helping us save money or improve our home. Always mentioned when I was clearly tired, too distracted for follow-up questions. Always presented as practical solutions rather than social interactions. I started noticing his truck during my drive home. Dark blue Chevy Silverado, usually parked on the street rather than his driveway. Sometimes there at 7 a.m. when I got home, sometimes not. I told myself contractors kept irregular hours, but the truck's presence started feeling like a countdown timer. The cameras went live on a Tuesday morning, 1 week after that suspicious phone call. I tested each one from Patterson's break room, watching empty rooms through my phone screen. Image quality was excellent, motion detection sensitive but not trigger-happy. Everything worked perfectly, which somehow made me feel worse. I was ready to document whatever was happening, but still hoped I was wrong. That same Tuesday afternoon, Vanessa sent an unusually detailed text about her day. Grocery shopping after work, then her sister's house to help with baby clothes sorting. She'd probably be home around 8 p.m., giving her time to make dinner before my shift. The message felt like an alibi delivered in advance. I responded casually, but something had crystallized. Vanessa had never voluntarily helped her sister with baby tasks. She found the process overwhelming and usually avoided those conversations. Her sister lived 20 minutes away, and Vanessa always complained about the drive. Why suddenly volunteer for an activity she normally dreaded? For the next 10 days, I checked camera feeds during every break at work. Empty house, empty house, empty house. Part of me started relaxing, wondering if paranoia had overridden common sense. Maybe Vanessa really had been doing yoga. Maybe her friendship with Marcus was genuinely innocent. Maybe I was destroying my marriage with suspicion over nothing. Nothing. But another part, the part that had learned to read patterns in shipping manifests, knew I was waiting for data to confirm what I suspected. In logistics, problems rarely announce themselves dramatically. They showed up as small discrepancies accumulating over time until the pattern became undeniable. I was pretty sure my marriage would follow the same pattern. The notification came at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, exactly 2 weeks after I'd installed the cameras. My phone buzzed with a motion alert from the backdoor camera, and my stomach dropped. I'd been checking feeds obsessively, watching empty rooms and starting to convince myself paranoia had gotten the better of me. Now, staring at the alert, I realized I'd been hoping I was wrong. I opened the camera app in Patterson's break room, surrounded by familiar night shift sounds. Distant forklifts, automated conveyors, the coffee machine that never worked right. The backdoor camera showed Marcus letting himself into my house with what looked like a spare key. He moved with casual familiarity, not breaking in but like someone who belonged there. He hung his jacket on the coat hook by the door, the same hook where I hung mine every morning. The hallway camera picked him up walking toward the living room. I switched feeds to watch him settle onto our couch. He wasn't nervous or furtive. He picked up the remote, started browsing Netflix like he lived there. The timestamp showed 11:51 p.m. I still had over 7 hours left on my shift. My hands were steady as I opened WhatsApp and created a new group. I'd been planning this for weeks, ever since installing the cameras. If I was going to expose Vanessa's betrayal, it needed to be comprehensive, undeniable, and permanent. A confrontation could be lied about afterward. Private evidence could be dismissed. But a live audience would make everything real and lasting. I started adding contacts: Vanessa's parents, her 2 sisters, her brother, her Aunt Linda, who loved family gossip, her Uncle Bob, who'd walked her down the aisle, her cousins from both sides. Everyone who mattered in her world, everyone whose opinion she cared about, everyone who would judge her for what she was about to do. I titled the group Family Movie Night and set the description as Special Live Broadcast Tonight. You won't want to miss this. The bedroom camera activated at 12:03 a.m. EM. Vanessa appeared wearing a silk robe I'd never seen, black, expensive looking, clearly purchased for this occasion. She wasn't surprised to see Marcus. She didn't startle or act guilty. She walked directly to him, settled into his arms, and kissed him with passion I hadn't seen from her in months. She whispered, "I missed you. I hate waiting all day for this." Marcus replied, hands already working at her robe's belt. "Worth the wait. Your husband working tonight?" "Until 7 a.m. We have all the time we need." The casualness hit me harder than physical betrayal. This wasn't weakness or recent mistake. They were comfortable, familiar with the routine, discussing my work schedule like logistical detail in their ongoing affair. How long had this been happening? How many nights had I been loading trucks while another man was in my bed with my wife? I started the live stream at 12:07 a.m., just as Vanessa was leading Marcus into our bedroom. The WhatsApp group already had 12 members online, late-night scrawlers checking phones before bed. Perfect timing. The stream went live with Vanessa and Marcus on camera, and the group chat immediately exploded. "What is this? Is that Vanessa? Who is that man? Oh my God. Is this live? Tenaciously, what are you doing?" More family members joined as notifications pinged their phones. Aunt Linda was typing furiously. Uncle Bob sent shocked face emojis. Vanessa's mother sent increasingly frantic messages. "Answer your phone right now," and "What is happening?" and "I'm calling your father." I watched through my phone as my wife had sex with another man while her entire extended family watched in real time. Comments kept coming: disgust, shock, outrage, disbelief. Her youngest cousin asked if this was some sick joke. Her sister demanded to know where I was, whether I knew what was happening. 26 people were watching by 12:30 a.m. The bedroom camera captured everything in clear detail. Not just physical betrayal, but emotional intimacy that hurt worse than sex. The way Vanessa touched Marcus's face, laughed at something he whispered, moved with him like they'd done this many times before. This wasn't just cheating. This was a relationship. Marcus must have heard Vanessa's phone buzzing with WhatsApp notifications because he asked her to put it on silent. She reached over to her nightstand, saw the flood of messages, and I watched her face change as she realized what was happening. She sat up abruptly, reading through the group chat, her skin going pale, even in dim bedroom lighting. "Oh my God. Marcus, we're being watched." "What are you talking about?" "My family, they can see us. There's a camera somewhere." She was frantically looking around now, panic making her voice shake. "Someone's streaming this live. My parents. My mom is watching this." They spent 10 minutes searching frantically, Vanessa crying hysterically while Marcus checked every corner. The group chat had grown to 31 viewers, family members sharing the stream link, everyone trying to process what they were witnessing. Vanessa's father had joined and sent a single message: "Pack your things, don't come home." I felt nothing watching their panic. No satisfaction, no regret, no anger. Just cold completion. Like finishing complex inventory and finding all numbers balanced perfectly. Everything added up now. All the small inconsistencies, changed behavior, suspicious conversations. It all made sense in context of a months-long affair conducted in my bedroom while I worked nights to support our future. By 12:45 a.m., Marcus had found the camera in my alarm clock. He held the small device up to his face, expression shifting from panic to rage as he realized someone had been planning this exposure. Someone had installed surveillance and waited for exactly this moment to destroy them both. I was already leaving work, telling my supervisor I had a family emergency. The live stream stayed active as I drove home through empty streets, 34 people watching Vanessa have a complete breakdown, while Marcus tried to figure out their next move. I parked in my driveway at 123 EIM. 37 people were watching as I walked through my front door. Marcus's truck was gone from our street by the time I'd walked through the house, turning off cameras and ending the live stream. 39 people had watched the complete destruction of my marriage, and the WhatsApp group was still exploding with messages when I finally muted it. The damage was done, comprehensive and permanent. In the digital age, shame becomes eternal. Vanessa was sitting on our bed when I returned to the bedroom, still fully clothed, her phone face down on the nightstand like she couldn't bear to see more messages. Her crying had stopped, replaced by hollow-eyed shock of someone processing catastrophic loss. She looked up at me as I entered, and I saw her calculating whether she had any moves left to play. "Adam, please, can we talk about this privately?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the stream statistics. Privacy? 39 family members just watched you with another man. Your cousin Jessica recorded it and posted it to Facebook before I could end the stream. Your privacy ended the moment you brought him into our bedroom. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I never meant for this to happen." "You never meant to get caught. There's a difference." I sat down in the chair across from our bed. The same chair where I'd folded laundry while she talked about her day, where I'd watched her get ready for work, where I'd planned to sit while feeding our future baby. "How long, Vanessa? Does it matter now?" "It matters to me." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. 6 months. It started when you were working those extra shifts back in the spring. 6 months. A quarter of our marriage. While I'd been putting in extra hours to build our savings for the house improvements she kept requesting, she'd been using those same hours to betray everything we'd built together. The house improvements that required Marcus's contractor expertise. The money she claimed to be saving. The sudden interest in my work schedule. The money for the bedroom furniture. The bathroom renovation fund. Where did it really go? Hotels, mostly. A few dinners. I bought some things. She gestured vaguely at herself, probably meaning expensive lingerie I'd never seen. I was going to pay it back. With what money? You were planning to leave me for him, weren't you? Her silence was confirmation enough. My phone buzzed with a call from her mother, then her sister, then her father. She wasn't just losing her husband. Her entire family was cutting her off in real time. The calls kept coming, and I watched her realize that her safety net was disappearing as quickly as her marriage. "Marcus is divorced," she said suddenly. "His divorce was finalized a few months ago." "I know. I looked him up after I started suspecting. I'd done more than look him up. I'd found his ex-wife's social media, seen her posts about dating again after her husband's affair. She posted about his cheating pattern 2 years ago, photos of texts, hotel receipts, everything. You weren't his first, and you probably weren't going to be his last." Vanessa's face crumpled as she realized she'd destroyed her marriage for a man who'd already proven he couldn't be faithful to anyone. The pattern was probably familiar to Marcus. Find an unhappy wife, offer practical help and emotional attention, escalate to an affair, then disappear when the situation became complicated. He'd fled our house the moment he realized he was being watched. abandoning her to face consequences alone. I was confused. Our marriage felt routine, and he made me feel... Don't. I stood up, suddenly exhausted by the predictability of it all. Don't give me the speech about feeling unappreciated or misunderstood. You made a choice every day for 6 months. You looked me in the eye every morning and lied about where you'd been and what you'd done. You planned this betrayal while asking me about having children together. My phone rang again. This time it was my own mother, probably alerted by the extended family network that connected our social circles. I declined the call, but the interruption reminded me that this scandal was spreading beyond Vanessa's immediate family. Our church, our neighbors, my co-workers who knew her, everyone would know about this within days. You need to pack your things. Tonight, I answered. Where am I supposed to go? My parents won't even answer their phones. My sister sent me a text saying she never wants to see me again. That's not my problem anymore, I replied. She stared at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in months. The accommodating husband who'd worked extra shifts to fund her lies was gone. The man who'd trusted her completely was gone. What remained was someone who'd methodically planned her destruction and executed it with devastating efficiency. You recorded everything. You planned this whole thing. It wasn't a question. I needed to know the truth. And I needed everyone else to know it too. She didn't have an answer for that. She started packing mechanically, pulling clothes from our shared dresser while I watched from the doorway. Her movements were automatic, like sleepwalking through the end of her old life. Every few minutes, her phone would buzz with another message and she'd flinch like being physically struck. By 3 a.m., she had 2 suitcases packed and was standing in our living room, looking around like she was memorizing details. The house felt different already, less like our shared space, more like my sanctuary being reclaimed. I'll need to come back for more of my things. Call first. And bring a witness, I replied. She nodded, understanding that we were already transitioning from husband and wife to hostile parties in a divorce proceeding. The legal aspects would be straightforward. Adultery was still grounds for fault-based divorce in our state, and I had video evidence that couldn't be disputed. I watched from the window as she loaded her car and drove away at 3:47 a.m. EM. The street was quiet, but I noticed lights on in a few neighboring houses. Word was already spreading through our small community. My phone had 43 missed calls and over 200 text messages. I turned it off and sat in my empty living room, surrounded by the silence that comes after a storm. Everything had gone exactly according to plan. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. 6 months later, I was living in a house I actually owned, driving a truck that was fully paid off, and sleeping better than I had in years. The divorce had been finalized in record time. Vanessa's attorney couldn't argue with video evidence, and she was in no position to demand anything beyond personal belongings. I kept the house, the savings account, and my dignity. She kept her shame and a reputation that would follow her wherever she went. The promotion at Patterson Logistics came 3 months after the divorce. Management had noticed my increased focus during the crisis. I'd channeled all emotional energy into work, picking up extra shifts and streamlining inventory processes. The raise meant I could afford mortgage payments alone, and the supervisor position meant day shifts. No more overnight hours, no more wondering what was happening in my empty house. I'd started dating again, carefully and selectively. Sarah worked in accounting at a different logistics company, had been divorced herself, and understood the value of taking things slowly. She appreciated my straightforward communication and unwillingness to tolerate dishonesty in any form. Our relationship was built on transparency rather than romance, which felt healthier. The fallout from that night had exceeded even my strategic expectations. Vanessa had become a local legend, not the kind anyone wanted to be. Her family's reaction had been swift and permanent. Her parents had moved to Arizona within 2 months, unable to handle gossip in their church community. Her sisters maintained minimal contact. Her brother had unfriended her on all social media and refused to include her in family events. The professional consequences had been equally severe. Word had reached her dental office through overlapping social networks, and while they couldn't fire her for personal conduct, the atmosphere had become toxic enough that she'd resigned. She'd moved to a city 3 hours away, working reception at a small medical practice and living in a studio apartment. Marcus had never returned to our neighborhood. His contracting business had collapsed after other wives came forward with similar stories. Apparently, my video evidence had prompted his ex-wife to share her own experiences, creating a pattern that destroyed his professional reputation. He'd moved out of state, leaving behind a trail of ruined marriages. The moral complexity of my revenge had never bothered me. I hadn't destroyed an innocent person. I'd simply revealed who Vanessa really was. The livestream wasn't cruel punishment but strategic justice, ensuring that her betrayal carried appropriate consequences in our community. I'd learned valuable lessons about trust and verification that served me well in my new relationship. Sarah and I shared passwords, schedules, and social media accounts without being asked. We'd both been betrayed by people we'd trusted completely, and we understood that real intimacy required transparency, not privacy. 1 year after the divorce, I received a friend request that made me smile. It came from Marcus's ex-wife, along with a message thanking me for evidence that had secured her favorable custody arrangement and alimony settlement. My video had become part of the legal record in her divorce proceedings, demonstrating a pattern of adultery that had cost Marcus significantly in court. The story had taken on a life of its own in our community. Young married couples used it as a cautionary tale about the importance of honesty. Parents shared it as a warning about permanent consequences of digital exposure. Church groups discussed it as an example of how private sin becomes public judgment when technology intersects with betrayal. Vanessa had sent me a single message 6 months after the divorce, a brief apology that felt more like closing a business transaction than addressing the destruction of a marriage. I'd read it once and deleted it without responding. She'd forfeited the right to closure when she'd chosen Marcus over our future together. Standing in my house on a Sunday afternoon, watching Sarah help me install new shelving in what would eventually become our shared home office, I reflected on how completely my life had transformed. The revenge hadn't just destroyed my betrayers. It had liberated me from a false relationship and taught me to value authentic connection over comfortable routine. I wasn't haunted by what I'd done. I was empowered by it. The live stream had been precise, proportional, and devastatingly effective. Vanessa and Marcus had learned that modern betrayal carries modern consequences, that privacy is an illusion when trust is violated, and that some people are capable of strategic patience that exceeds their capacity for forgiveness. Justice, I'd learned, doesn't always require forgiveness. Sometimes it just requires making sure that actions carry appropriate consequences. I'd turned my worst day into my greatest victory, and I'd never been more satisfied with a strategic decision in my life. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.